In a bombshell column, the Boston Globe's Adrian Walker recently accused two prominent Boston ministers of participating in an old-school shakedown. Last night, one of those ministers fired back, protesting passionately that the Globe got the story wrong. Adam Riley was there and has more.
I went to the enemy's camp and I took back what he stole from me.
The gathering at Pastor Bruce Wall's Dorchester Church last night was part prayer meeting and part press conference.
Let me address the unfortunate assault on my character.
The focus of Wall's wrath was this column by the Boston Globe's Adrian Walker, accusing Wall and associates of trying to shake down the state's new commuter rail provider for a cool $105,000. In fact, Wall said he'd been cultivating a business relationship with the firm Keolis for months, and that invoice was just tough tactics.
There was no attempt to shake down Keolis. Keolis was establishing a working relationship with the advisory group. There's no need to shake somebody down when they're already saying that we are going to have a commitment.
Afterward, Wall told Beat the Press that he didn't know the gist of Walker's column until it was published.
When I talked to Adrian Walker, I didn't know that the invoice was a problem, that I was in trouble. I didn't know. When I read his column, I said, oh, for Adrian, the invoice is an issue.
Was the word shakedown, the phrase shakedown, ever used in your conversation?
No.
But maybe the press isn't the source of Wall's problems. After all, it's Wall who's trying to shift from unpaid advocacy to paid consulting, a transition he admits has been awkward.
It was morphing. It was happening as we were, it was happening as we were running down the track. We didn't really know how this thing was going to pan out.
Still, for the crowd at Wall's church, the lesson was clear. Don't trust the media.
Despite television cameras, despite reporters, Lord, the truth will outlast and outshine it all.
Amen to that. So, Emily, we tried contacting Adrian Walker to see if he wanted to weigh in on last night's event. He took a pass, in part because he wasn't there. It's been interesting to watch the way Wall's tone has shifted in the last couple of weeks. About 9 days ago, when he sent out a press release saying he was going to hold this event, he was very combative and really kind of focusing his ire on the Globe, saying that they had practiced gotcha journalism and things like that. Last night, he hit the Globe some. We saw it in that setup piece. But he also said things like, I'm not here to go after a specific paper or a specific columnist. And then he did to an extent. But I think he's gradually realizing that even if Adrian Walker didn't provide the context he wanted Adrian Walker to provide, that Adrian Walker is not the primary source of his problems here.
And interestingly, Eugene Rivers has disappeared out of this completely because initially he too was saying the Globe refused to put this in the story, the Globe refused to put that in the story, they refused to take a letter from the editor, they've been out to get us, and this is prima facie evidence that they're just here to mess us up.
And actually, last night Walt told me that. As far as he knows, the Globe has not refused to sort of follow up in a way that they've asked the Globe to. So that's a little different than Rivers right there.
Well, look, first of all, as far as Rivers dropping out of sight, my guess is he understands what Bruce Wall does not, that if you want a fire to die down, you don't give it oxygen. So maybe that's why he's gone underground on this. I don't really know what to make of this whole mess. I mean, I certainly think, Adrian Walker's a solid columnist, and everything in his original column was, on the record and verified by the people involved. So there's really no disputing the facts there. Maybe the interpretation can be disputed. But what strikes me about all this is there's a huge story of great concern to the entire community here in Boston, which is the egregious income disparities between the broader white community and the communities of color. And there's another story about Roxbury and Dorchester and Mattapan being bypassed for big development. Again over the years, just Google the words Mattapan State Hospital if you want to learn more about that whole travesty. And this is something that Globe columnists and other journalists would be well served to dig into on a regular basis. It would be a shame if all this noise occurs over this story, then dies down, and there's no further attention paid to that much larger and more interesting story.
And I would echo that and say there's a real story here about what are the diversity goals of Keolis, given the population here and the task at hand. And that's going to be obscured in all this. I fear that it's already been obscured. So Reverend Wall is right to try to fight for his reputation. I've always known him to be a stand-up guy, and this is very sad to me to see him involved in this. But I think Adrian Walker's column was, you know, spot on from a journalistic standpoint, and you know, that's a story that anybody would do because it seems on its face just so outrageous on the one hand and so odd on the other.
I will have to say, I just want to jump in and say there's no altruism on the part of Keolis.
I didn't say there was.
No, I know, but they co-opted the reverends, you know, Eugene Rivers and Bruce Walt. They needed their support. They got them to send this letter, you know, that went into the filing, so they got the award. You know, they took it away from that other commuter rail. This is the French company. They came in. They needed these guys, and they got what they wanted from them. And once they got it, they disappeared.
Well, but I think what is not clear is to what extent did the expectation from the DRM group. And by the way, here's my question. I've never seen anybody else identify with the group.
No.
Who's in the group? Somebody tell me who's in the group.
Incorporated. We looked at it.
Well, but, you know, okay, but who's in the group, incorporated or not?
But also, I think, you know, the issue here is everyone agrees that Keolis is making hay with this, but it is disingenuous for them to pretend that you can suddenly just invoice people for $105,000 for services rendered when, you know, it did seem like sort of a bungled attempt to sort of shake down Keolis for not giving them their due, whereas a better choice would have been to go to the Boston Globe and have them do that story as opposed to this one. They sort of gave the Globe a much worse story to focus on.
Well, I should say that Bruce Wall's big contention is that a business relationship had been evolving for months and continued to evolve after this alleged shakedown, and that Adrian Walker's column made it sound like this $105,000 invoice came out of nowhere. And according to Bruce Wall, it was in fact part of this thing that had been building for a while.
And we know because we've seen emails that verify
voluminous correspondence.
Yes, voluminous correspondence.